Computer. Hey, folks, welcome to the Camp Constitution Report with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show, or this report, I should say, is watched, or listened to on our YouTube channel, our Podomatic page, our, Vimeo page, as well as Amazon and, about a half a dozen others. And brought to you by Camp Constitution, which, among other things, runs a week-long family camp and next year's camp, July 12th to the 17th. And this will be our 18th annual camp. And it'll also be our 250th anniversary of the founding of this great country. And that's going to be our theme, the 250th anniversary. We do have classes every year on some of these topics, but there'll be a special emphasis on the Revolutionary War, the Declaration of Independence, and we hope to have a Sons of the American Revolution Honor Guard there, and have a lot of great history, some reenactors as well. And you can visit our website, campconstitution.net, for more information about our camp and all the other activities that we do year round, including our ladies' retreat coming up in early May. And of course, we have a great our download section. We have some incredible items that can be used as educational weapons, and we do encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got over 17,200 subscribers. We want to get that up, and we have over something like 1,600 videos. So lots of great videos, and we try to put up a couple a week. You can look at all of our classes at our camp, I think since 2010. So you can actually create a educational syllabus just by using our videos. So with that, we want to introduce our guest tonight, and it's Bebe Diamond, and Bebe is no stranger to Camp Constitution. She and her mom have spoken at our camp over the years, and I think she was also a guest speaker at our ladies' retreat a couple of years ago. And Bebe, welcome to the Camp Constitution Report.
Well, thank you for having me, Hal. It's an honor to be here. I'm so grateful for the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, well, you're looking at we're sharing the screen with the website Mordecai Mission, and this is an organization that I've been involved with, not as much as I would like since there's so many time constraints. But Bebe, first off, introduce yourself instead of me reading a biographical sketch. And I want to point out something. This was something I'll never forget. It was, let's see, September of 2020. We were in the middle or the midst of the unconstitutional lockdown, and Camp Constitute held its first annual potluck barbecue at our Lane House in Lexington. It would be our Labor Day weekend. We held it on a Saturday, and we had, I don't know, about 50 or 60 people in the backyard, the front yard, all of us unmasked. And then we took a little trip. Some of us took a little trip down to the Lexington, the monument down in Lexington Green, where you encountered some white liberal women, and we got that on video. And I think I'll put a link to it in this video in the description. You were very polite with them, but very firm. There were these white liberal women living in, lily white Lexington, have a
Right.
population, I think, of like 1.3% black, and that 0.3 probably was Reverend Steve Kraft. And here they are with Black Lives Matter signs. And but we can get into that a little bit later. So why don't you introduce yourself, and then and we'll talk a little bit about the Mordecai Mission, and then of course your late great mom.
Well, thank you once again. Well, my name is Bebe Diamond. I'm the Communications Director for the Mordecai Mission. But before that, I worked very closely with my late mother, Barbara from Harlem, on her mission to educate, to inform, and to enlighten. And my mother was a Democrat because most Black people were born into that mentality and culture of automatically voting for Democrats. And so what my mother did, she bucked against the system because it went against her Christian values and her patriotism. What the Democrats were standing for, it was just it really just it hurt her very much. and it was hurting the Black community. So she was on a mission to educate. And as part of that mission, my mother wrote a book called Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations. And as you know how my mother traveled, particularly in the Northeast and up in New England, promoting this book. And I think it's a groundbreaking book. I know I'm biased as her daughter, but one of the things that she and I did was we had a weekly show called Our Urban Story. We spoke wherever we were invited, tea parties, at the time when tea parties were in Republican clubhouses, wherever we were invited to spread the message of Black conservatives, that there were Blacks who are conservatives. And this is way before Candace Owens and
Mhm.
Brandon Tatum, Officer Tatum. You know, my mother was one of those Blacks who was a conservative before it became a thing, if you will. So when President Trump ran for office the first time, she was on board. I mean, she went down to Trump Tower. We called people across the country because we knew that where the Democrats were headed was anti-God and anti-American. So I worked for very many years with my mother, going as far as Missouri, spreading this message, giving speeches just to wake people up. And one of the things my mother did was she actually liked to talk to people one on one. She would go in the streets of Harlem or the Bronx and Brooklyn and talk to people. Now, she remained registered as a Democrat so that when she talked to particularly Black people, she could say, I too am a registered Democrat, but I
Mhm.
vote for Republicans in the general, you can do that general election.
Right.
And so my mother was a very powerful voice, but not only did she speak it, but she lived it. At one point, she ran a daycare type of thing to help underprivileged youth in Harlem. She really lived and she walked the walk. So it was an honor and privilege to work with my late great mother, Barbara from Harlem. And now with the Mordecai Mission, it's an organization that has people from all over the country, different ethnic groups coming together. And our mission is restoring America to Christ. To just it's not just about making America great again, but make America pray again and more prayerful, thoughtful, and grateful to Almighty God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Thank you.
Yes, I'm reading the website here, and I have it obviously in the screen share. The Mordecai Mission is a political organization founded and led by born again Christians. We are dedicated to supporting and promoting godly legislation and helping to repeal ungodly legislation by supporting candidates and office holders whose political philosophy is eliminated by their Christian faith in the Word of God. With God's strong hand, grace, and guidance, the fulfillment of our mission will help restore righteousness at every political level, federal, state, and local. And of course, we know the story of Mordecai in Esther 4:14. For
Yes.
if although holdest thy peace at this time, then they shall enlargement and deliverance to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And that term is used a lot for such a time as this. And sometimes it's used inappropriately, but we believers, of course, use it for such a time as this. We are definitely in a very unique time in our not just in our nation's history, but our world history. And I was your mom who invited me to participate in the Mordecai Mission, and I was very honored to meet William Pastor Brown and some of the other members. We had a meeting in Lexington, and then we went down to Plymouth, and we showed Pastor Brown his daughter and Minister Johnson from Michigan, from
Yes.
Detroit, who I don't think is right now involved. He had some issues he had to deal with, and a few other wonderful gentlemen. And we had a great time. And I'm not on all the calls and conferences, but Pastor Brown, I spoke with him just recently. And of course, there's going to be a strong emphasis on exposing the Islamic problem we face in this
Yes.
country. And the bottom line, and I've long contended this. Now, I know there are some Muslims who want to live peaceably, who do assimilate, I have a friend who's from Long Island, by the way, who he's a Jewish man, Bob Unger. He said he read the Quran. Now, I understand that in the from a Muslim perspective, you can only read the Quran in its original Arabic, but he think he got a good translation, got a gist of it. And he said that you can be a bad Muslim and a good person, but you can't if you're sticking to the Quran, you can't be a good person and a good Muslim. And some years ago, it was in 17, a friend of mine, he's an Episcopal priest, Father Carl, Michael Carl, did a presentation for us dealing with what Muslims or what Islamists believe. And it's really contrary to the Christian faith. They don't worship the same God we worship. They worship the moon god. And even though they acknowledge Christ as a prophet and the virgin birth, living in a Muslim country, there are a few exceptions, I believe. I think Turkey might be a little less repressive to Christians, but if you look at where Christians are persecuted, it's going to be either in a communist country or a Muslim country. So I'm very happy that we need to do this because there's a lot of people out there, especially Christians, who just don't understand. And again, it isn't about hating people. They need to have a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. But when you invite a culture, and it's not just a religion, it's more of a culture. It's a political system
Yes,
as well as a religious system. With
absolutely.
Christianity, we believe, of course, we believe that it's not a separation of church and state, but the civic government or civil government has their own duties. They should work in cooperation with the people of faith, but we don't want a state church. We don't have these are the laws you must live under, and we also don't have this concept of dehimitude, where in a Muslim country, if you do not embrace that form of the Islamic belief system, you are a second and third class citizen, and you pretty much they barely tolerate you. You can have a church, but you can't proselytize. You can't even teach it to your own children. So you don't want to live in a world run by Muslims. I mean, unfortunately, that's just, and we have to be not we can't be afraid to speak the truth on this issue.
Well, I agree with you, and I recently created, with some input from other members of the Mordecai Mission, a presentation on Islam that I'd like to share with you, Hal. And if you feel it's suitable, please share it with your audience, and I'll send that to you in the next day or two. Islam is a threat to this nation. Sharia law is it would be a total violation of our constitutional rights. To your point, everyone except a male Muslim is a second class citizen, including female
That's
Muslims.
right. That's right.
In the Quran, in Surah 4 and 34, husbands are allowed to beat their wives or strike her if they fear disobedience. Not if she is if she is disobedient, if they even fear disobedience. So Islam is not compatible with Western civilization at all. It is actually, in my opinion, very dangerous. And I do believe it was created, and I believe it was created by a demonic force. It was created to subvert and thwart, if you will, Judaism and Christianity, because Jews and Christians are special targets in the Quran. We are called people of the book
Hmm.
in the Quran. And you have passages such as Surah 929, where it commands Muslims to fight those who believe not in Allah, nor those who believe in the last day, the final day. It tells them to subjugate us, or we pay a tax, or they kill us.
Hmm.
We convert, pay tax, or kill us. So Islam is very dangerous. Now, people will raise the argument, well, there's violence in the Old Testament. What I like to say is the violence in the Old Testament is descriptive, it's historic. However, the passages in the Quran are written in present tense form. It says, fight those, Surah 9:29. In other passages like Surah 5 and 51, it says, do not take Jews and Christians as your friends because they are allies and protectors of each other. This is all written in present tense form. Strike terror in the hearts of the non-believers. So whether you're a Muslim in the year 800 or in the year 2025, these passages or these verses, if you want to be a good Muslim, they still apply.
What's
So,
interesting is in Somalia, the Somalian community that was invited to come in this country in the early '90s, when that nation was basically became a failed state, and it was George Daddy Bush that brought him in originally. Let's not
right.
forget that it wasn't just Democrats. They brought him into Lewiston, Maine, and by the way, I have some friends that live in the area. The Somalian leadership said that we will resettle, but we do not want to be resettled in a Black American community.
Wow.
They didn't want to be around American blacks. They're playing the race card in the Somalian in Minneapolis, but it's interesting uh, um, that Muslims were the ones that introduced slavery to sub-Saharan Africa. That's a fact that they don't really want you to believe. And if it wasn't for the Christian West, when they signed treaties with various Muslim nations insisting on the end of slavery, that Muslims would not have ended slavery in various countries. In fact, most of them were ended late in the 1800s, in early 1920s. I think there were still some Muslim nations that practiced slavery, and there are some today that still do it, as we understand. So when they play the race card, they say, "Well, you remember that you folks introduced slavery to sub-Saharan Africa, and as bad as the transatlantic slave trade was, the trans-African or trans-Arabian was far worse and much crueler. And they also, you're not allowed to enslave a fellow Muslim. That's why they didn't try to convert any of these slaves into their faith. So that's something you need to understand. And they're playing this Nazi. Oh, it's like 1936 Germany in the United States. Really? You folks tend to be very anti. Now, I'm sure there are some that aren't. I don't want to say that all groups believe this. That would be terribly wrong. But they tend to be very anti-Semitic. At least Ilha Omar, the congresswoman, she hates Jews. She's always criticizing Jews, and I think anti-Semitism is runs quite. And she can't even condemn acts of violence against Jews. Even when 9/11 happened, she said something happened. Somebody did something. That's as much as you're going to get out of her. And what's
Yeah,
amazing too is that they'll use the Democrat Party. They'll all support the far left crazy things, but you're not going to see Omar aborting her children. They will not. Muslim women will not abort their Muslim babies, but they're okay for the infidels. They don't care if the
correct.
infidels cut the penises off of their 8-year-old boys and turn them into,
True.
try to turn them into girls. And so they love all this abomination because it'd be easier to control and conquer this nation. So let me put
Absolutely.
that in your court. What do you think about that?
No, you're absolutely right. I want to go back to slavery just for just a moment, make 2 points, if I may. What many people may not realize is Muhammad, their so-called prophet, owned black slaves. And this is what many Muslims don't want us to know. They were heavily involved in the slave trade. And I believe it was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, and I could be wrong, did not end slavery until 1960 or 1970 no, I think it was 1960, under pressure from the West. We're the reason why they stopped slavery.
That's correct.
But I want to, Ilhan Omar, the hatred of Jews, that is part and parcel of Islam. There is a hadith, and the hadiths are the sayings and actions of their prophet. And one of the hadiths says, is Sahih al-Bukhari, and Sahih means it's a reliable hadith. It says the last day will not come until there's a stone or a tree that says there's a Jew behind me, come kill that Jew. This is what Muslims are taught. And as I read the Quran, and I want to get, my mother had a version of the Quran from Saudi Arabia in which
Hmm.
Jews are described as the descendants of apes and monkeys. And you have to say, how do we go from the Holy Bible, where the Jewish people were chosen in Deuteronomy 7, God chose them from all the people on the earth, to in the Quran, they're being described as the descendants of apes and monkeys. They're infidels, they're kafirs, just like Christians are. So we're not serving the same God. So the hatred of Jews, unfortunately, is part of the Islamic culture. That's one of the reasons it's very dangerous. And what I get from reading the Quran is that Christians are considered misguided because, like, we believe in the Trinity. But Jews are treated like they're crooked or wicked or something.
Hmm.
And so this is in the culture. Now let's step back to during the Holocaust. The Mufti of Jerusalem, a Muslim, he went to Germany. I don't know if he moved to
Yeah,
Berlin
there
so
are
he could
pictures
work
of
with,
him with Hitler. Yeah,
yes, so
yeah.
he could work with Adolf Hitler on the quote unquote final solution, the murder of Jews. The hatred of Jews is just part and parcel of this culture, unfortunately. And so you have things like the lie about the Nakba, the disaster of 1948, as if Jews just showed up out of
Mm.
nowhere in the Middle East in 1948. That's simply not true. Jewish people have had a presence in the Middle East for thousands of years, in
That's
spite of the
correct. Yeah,
diaspora.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
And when you talk about places like Gaza, Gaza is mentioned throughout the Bible, but not once in the Quran. I checked. Jerusalem is not mentioned once in the Quran. I checked.
What I
So
find
when people, when they
fascinating,
claim, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead, please.
Gaza. Now you have Muslim nations all around Gaza, wealthy Muslim nations, and
Correct.
they won't take one citizen of Gaza into their country. They will not allow them. Why
That's
is
right.
that? Why is
Right.
that?
That culture is so, it's demonic. It is evil. I mean, they're teaching little babies to kill. I mean, to hate Israelis, to hate Jews, to hate Americans. It's very poisonous, it's very toxic, but it's not fair to try to carve out a quote unquote Palestinian state in the middle of Israel. That's not fair when you have 50 plus Muslim nations. I don't get this. Why are there 50 plus Muslim nations and but people have a problem with one Jewish nation? That's
And that
outrageous.
Israel is what, 8,000, 10,000 square miles? It's the size of Massachusetts.
You have the
It's
size of New
yeah.
Jersey,
And
whatever.
not only
Yes.
that, but and by the way, I think it's legitimate to criticize secular political Israel. That's I
Right.
think we should be able, either we criticize our own country, Jews live in Israel, criticize Israel, but so saying that, um, it's 10,000, 8,000, 10,000 square miles. They allow Muslims to live. There's Muslims in the
Correct.
Knesset. I think
Correct.
20% of the population. And so there have been examples of Muslims living peaceably. It happened also in, what country? It was Algeria. Algeria was part of France up until the 60s, the 50s and 60s, when they basically handed over to the communists. They had a Christian, Jewish, and Muslim population that got along for the most part. So there have been some examples of that, but then of course the French de Gaulle, of course, who was very pro-communist, ended up turning it
Right.
over to decolonializing, and then
Mm.
the rest is history. And then of course they don't get along now, but they were getting along. And also Christians in the Middle East. There was lots of Christians
Yep.
in Jordan, for example, in Syria and Lebanon, but mostly Christians they've been decimated, and most people don't know that they've either been murdered or they've left these countries, but most of them have been executed and murdered.
And you know what's a shame is, unfortunately, you have conservative influencers like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson who won't talk about the persecution of Christians in Syria. They won't talk about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. And the main persecutors of Christians, besides the godless left, are Muslims. This is a fact. We have to get real about Islam. from the highest levels of our government all the way down to the street. It is a danger. It is an immediate threat to the United States. And so we have to, one of the things that I want to do is really, I know that Senator Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama, we have, forget his name, escapes me, out of Congressman Chip Roy out of Texas. They want to push for a ban on Sharia law throughout the United States, and I hope we were successful at that. Islam is very dangerous. Unchecked, it is very dangerous. And and I hate to talk about this on your show, but it inspires pedophilia because their so-called prophet married Aisha at 6 and had sex with her when she was 9. So you
Yes.
have countries like Iran and Afghanistan that allow old men to marry 9-year-old girls. It's
It's
disgusting.
yeah.
It's
It's
disgraceful. We
it's a
cannot have
it's a
that in the United States.
it's a whole different and that's why see our immigration policy it would for over the years it was designed to allow people that could assimilate wherever you're from. You come here, you no longer have allegiance. You may still have obviously strong attachments or feelings for your homeland, whether it be Ireland or China or wherever it is. That's fine, but your allegiance is to the country that you've now adopted. This is your country. You love it. You want to what's best for it. And unfortunately, the wave of immigrants that we've been getting, I mean, there's no doubt some great exceptions, and I've met a lot of them. In fact, some of these naturalized citizens are extremely patriotic and would put the average American to shame with their knowledge of our history and their love of our country. But when the vast majority of people that are coming to this country do not even have any intention of assimilating and embracing our culture and our worldview, we're going to lose our country. I mean, it's just a matter of time. And they all because of abortion, because of the feminist movement, because of these weak, I call them cowardly beta males. We're not reproducing, but these folks come in, they all have 5 to 10 children, and they're
Right.
not afraid to have big families where it's supposed to be discouraged. And that's not going to, you just do the math. And they know it. These folks know it. There was a Pakistani, I don't even want to mention his name, but he was a New York Times writer, and he just made a video, I think it was on TikTok or X, and he basically is saying, you people are losers. You let us, in other words, he's laughing at us for laser. We came in and we're winning. We're going to win. We're going to destroy your country. We hate your culture. We hate everything about you. You're phony. You're fraudulent, and we're winning. We got you win. All this kind of racist garbage. And but I think he is actually doing us a favor because now this is what they really are about. And so thank you for, they let the cat out of the bag a little too soon. You don't usually do that until you know you're going to have victory. But I believe there is a God in heaven. And I believe
Amen.
that there are people around the world that say, we've had enough. And I also like to think that many of these people that are trapped in this faith will leave it. And of course, I'm hearing
Yes.
stories. I have a friend of mine. I don't think his name is Harrison. He goes to Uganda. He told me where he's been into Muslim villages, and the whole village converts to Christianity
Wow.
because yeah, no, he said this is stuff you're not going to read on your little headlines, and it's really the power of the Holy Spirit doing this. So that's really the prayer. It's not, and I don't want to see any innocent people. I know that what they did, what the Hamas did to the Jews on
Right.
October
Right.
7th, 2 years ago was a horrible. I mean,
Horrible.
if you're a devout believer in God, your Muslim God, you rape, you murder people, cut their heads off, and that's evil. That's satanic. There's nothing
That's
godly about
satanic.
that. Nothing godly about that. And in war, there's always going to be what they call collateral damage. I hate to say that.
Right.
World War II. In fact, in World War II, that's when we started bombing civilians, became targets, and not too many people had an issue with that. We dropped 2 bombs on Japan, 2 nuclear
That's right.
bombs targeting civilians. And the argument was, well, the war will come to a quicker conclusion. We
Right.
can just, I mean, I have some issues with that. as a Christian, I don't think you should ever deliberately target civilian populations, but that's how warfare is being waged these
Right.
days and has been. And it wasn't created by Israel. It was created by
Right.
the West. Let's put it that way. Let's be honest about it. So, well, let's talk a little bit more about your mom's book. Do you have a copy of it to show? I wish I brought
I
my
do.
copy. Yeah,
Thank you
please
for
show it.
asking. Thank you for asking. I do. Thank you.
Yeah, now I read this book. It came out more than a few years ago, but it's some timeless truths in there. And there's a picture of your beautiful mom. Your mom was beautiful inside and out. You're disappearing in the green screen there. Your mother is rising over the Golden Gate Bridge. And now, where can people get a copy of that book if the listeners here or the
The
viewers?
Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations can be found on Amazon. If it's easier, you could just type in Barbara from Harlem and book, Barbara from Harlem and book, and it'll pop up. Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations. It's not a perfect book. I'm going back and I'm probably going to edit some things, but it's a powerful book. And it was written from her heart, and how by default she grew up as a Democrat, and the events that led her to know that it was wrong just voting for Democrats, because they were going against God's word and they were going against how this country was founded. The Democrats are an enemy within, unfortunately. I hate to say that. Not all Democrats, but the Democrat
No.
leadership.
Well,
So this was her journey.
I grew up in Boston, as you know. I'm up here in New
Yes.
Hampshire now, and I lived in a predominantly Democrat area. At one point, it was probably white. As time went on, it became predominantly black and Hispanic. And I've known some really good Democrats that love them. That most of them are dead now, unfortunately. They loved America. They may have had maybe they wanted a larger, more government control over people, but they loved America. They celebrated Christmas. They went to church. They had no issue with Christopher Columbus Day. In fact, it was the Democrats that made it a federal holiday back in the 1930s. You see, um, and believe it or not, the pro-life movement in the wake of Roe v. Wade was predominantly Democrat Catholics. That generation is long gone. They're long
Wow.
gone. I think there was only one Democrat pro-life in Congress. He's from Texas, and they spent millions in a primary trying to unseat him. I mean, one out of what 200 plus that are there. And I know the guy that's represented me when I lived in Boston. He was pro-life, and he ran for Congress. And they probably said, "Look, Stevie Lynch, you'll have this job as long as you want it, but you got to change your position on Second Amendment. You got to change your position on abortion, and you got to support the homosexual or whatever LGBTQ crap that comes." They didn't say it that way, of course, that we put in front of you, and he did that his convictions, he didn't really have any, because it was very quickly, uh, I'll I'll vote in favor of all these things, and I'll be aggressive about it as long as I can have this job. So that's what you have today. Our friend Vince Ellison, he makes the case that the Democrat Party is the most evil organization in the history of the world. Well, I know he makes a case for it. I don't know if I would agree. Maybe the last 10 or 15 years, that's the case, unfortunately. Now you look at the election in Virginia. Here was this incredible woman of color, a black woman, conservative, running Christian. Obama, who's told us last year that black men, you got to vote for blacks, you got to vote for a black woman, even though Harris was only not even maybe not even a third black. You got to vote for the black woman, brothers. But you don't vote for the black woman if she believes in Christian values. And the guy running for attorney general, he was they call him House of Delegates. He advocated the violent death of the former Republican Speaker of the House, the violent death of his children, and the guy still got elected. There's something
Yes.
fundamentally wrong with people who would support somebody like that. They say, look, maybe I like him, but when he came out and said that stuff, and then the woman, his colleagues tried to she tried to say, no, come on, no, I mean it. I mean, he doubled
Wow.
down on it. And I
Wow.
mean, that's, and then you in New York, of course, I feel bad for all these. There's a lot of good people in New York City. They voted for a guy who is
Yes.
a basically a Marxist Muslim. And
Yes. Yes,
it
he
was
is.
interesting too. Um, you say, well, how could the Muslim faith be compatible with with communism? A lot, years ago there was Muslims who hated communism, like in Afghanistan. But there's a lot of Muslims that have embraced the socialist perspective. And if you read, you're well versed in the Quran, so it's not a capitalist or free market document, is it?
No, it's not. It actually isn't. And it's really about being a slave of Allah. It's not.
Well, yeah,
And
Islam
I'm not
means submission. Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Islam does not mean peace. It means submission. I don't know who told George W. Bush to say Islam means peace, because that's a complete lie. And Muslims have been repeating that lie over and over, and they want people to be ignorant about the true meaning of Islam. It means submission. You're right.
Maybe there was an episode of I think it was the Outer Limits. It was a show back in the 60s where this alien race came down, and they visited the UN, they visited all the nation capitals of the world, and they had this book that they couldn't understand what the book was. It was called How to Serve Man, right? And they thought
Wow.
it was that these people, and so all these leaders, they all decided to let these wonderful aliens control the world. And things were going on pretty good for a while. And then they had exchange programs. So some of these humans would go on the ship and go to their planet, and they weren't coming back. So there was a group of people on one of the ships, and this professor said, "We've the book How to Serve Man. We've been able to figure what it means. It's a cookbook, you know."
Oh, jeez.
And that's what
Wow.
I think. That's what I think the Quran is. How to serve man. It's a cookbook.
Yeah,
To destroy the rest of the world. And
correct.
some of these programs we watched years ago have some interesting lessons to be learned if we learn from them. Um,
That's
and
true.
and
It's
it's
true.
interesting. They're basically flaunting their stuff right in our face. They're laughing at it. You idiots! You let us in. We tell you how much we hate you. We're
That,
going to
that's
destroy your.
that's
We're going to take your country over. We're going to destroy you. And
but that's
I
dumb though.
used to.
That's
Yeah,
not smart for them to do that. The
no,
male Muslims are very cocky, they're arrogant, they make these proclamations, and they want to intimidate us by public praying, by saying this stuff with anger and vigor, vigorously saying these things as if by saying it, it will make it true. If you try to impose Islam on us, that is a violation of our First Amendment right. Now you're either going to be sued, you're going to be jailed, or somebody's going to pull out their Glock 47 or Glock 9, whatever. You're not going to force Islam down our throats. And I think if these Muslim males who do all this bragging and boasting, they need to tread carefully, particularly in the South and the Midwest. Okay? Don't act like you're going to force us to accept Islam. What they really want to do is they want to give the impression of taking over and conquering without having to fire a single shot. Because in the US, we are going to be very, very tough for them to force us to accept Islam. So they want to give the impression they're taking over. They want to give the impression they have this great strategy. They're going to win over the United States because they feel if they get the United States, God forbid, they have the whole world. The
mhm.
world is their oyster. This is the big prize. Yes, England, yes, to a certain extent. And even in the United Kingdom, they're only 6% of the population. And I don't know how they have 85 Sharia councils in the UK, but they're 6%. But they want to give the impression by being bullies, by being aggressive. And the English, I don't know what happened to the English British men, but it's not like here in the US where we have a Second Amendment. So it's not going to be as easy to bully us. That's what they want to bully us. They
That's
want to
right.
intimidate us. So we say things like, "Oh, Los Angeles has fallen. Oh, America has fallen." So they want to win without firing a single shot through public prayer, bullying, having four wives with 20 children. That's how they really want to win, by the ballot. That's how they want to win because they know they cannot beat us, nor can they beat any country in Europe militarily. So
Well,
that's my spiel.
Charles Martel in the Battle of Tours, 732, I think, AD. They beat back the Muslims were extremely aggressive in their first couple of hundred years. They conquered and they eventually got Turkey, which was a Christian stronghold of Turkey, and they've held it ever since what 1415 and committed
Mm,
horrible atrocities. They promised not to murder, and they murdered everybody. The Christians and in Cyprus, they did the same thing. Then finally, they were invading in Austria, and it was the siege of Vienna. In fact, that's where the crescent roll comes from. They were
mm.
basically mocking the moon god. It was a
Ah,
baker in Vienna, and so militarily we were able to defeat them. But I think what happened is we have a self-loathing problem. We have people in this nation and in Western Europe that have been taught by the communists and the Marxists to hate their history, and therefore,
yes,
what do we fight? What's to defend if we're Englishmen? What's to defend if we're Frenchmen or if
right.
we're Americans? Or we're evil? Our Christianity's false. Our founders were all evil people and so forth. Well, I tell you what, I put up any founder in Christian countries against any Muslim historical character. Even with all their problems. And yes, we've made mistakes. There's lots of sin, but
Yes,
I would take Western civilization, which afforded the greatest amount of freedom for the greatest amount of people, and I'd take the free market system again.
absolutely.
And it was interesting too. If we're so evil and so racist, why are they all trying to come over here? You would think
Exactly.
we'd sound the alarm. No, brothers, brown and
Right.
black brothers, you don't want to come to this evil, wicked nation. You need to stay out. It's all run by fascists and neo Nazis, right? Et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
It's a lie from the pit of hell. So
Yes, it
anyway,
is.
this has been a great. We could go on for a long, long time, I'm sure, but I know if the video's too long, people click it. Unless you're Joe Rogan and you can talk for 8 hours and everyone listens, but. So again, where can people? Oh, dogs are barking. That means it's time to go. Anyway, where can people get your book?
Please go to Amazon.com. Again, Barbara from Harlem, and just put in book and she'll pop up.
All right,
Okay?
You've been listening to and watching the Camp Constitution Report with your host Hal Shurtleff. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Vimeo, and all the other social media. And with that, we want to thank you. God bless you, and until next time, may God richly bless you.